The Book of TeaZy, Book 1, Year 1000 AD, the time the toilet clogged up.
In the grand castle of Rialto, a peculiar crisis arose one fateful day. The king's favorite noble's personal lavatory on the west bank of the castle was clogged, and this was no ordinary inconvenience. King TeaZy, known for his eccentric problem-solving methods, was called to handle the matter himself. Accompanied by his loyal jester, Sir Christian the Fool, King TeaZy strode towards the troubled chamber. The king's face was etched with irritation, for he had no patience for trivial matters. As they reached the lavatory, the stench wafted out, causing Christian the Fool to wrinkle his nose in disgust. "Your Majesty," Sir Christian ventured, "perhaps we should summon the royal plumbers?" "Nonsense!" King TeaZy bellowed. "We shall solve this problem ourselves." The king inspected the toilet, a marvel of medieval engineering, but no amount of prodding or poking seemed to alleviate the blockage. As the minutes dragged on, King TeaZy's frustration grew. He shouted orders, examined the pipes, and even attempted a few incantations, but all to no avail. Sir Christian, ever the faithful jester, tried to lighten the mood with jokes and jests, but the king's patience was wearing thin. "Enough!" TeaZy roared, his face turning a deep shade of red. "If I cannot solve this, perhaps a more direct approach is needed." In a fit of royal rage, King TeaZy seized Christian by the collar. "Your Majesty, what are you doing?" Christian squeaked, eyes wide with fear. Without a word, King TeaZy hoisted the jester and, with a mighty heave, hurled him into the gaping maw of the toilet. There was a loud, wet squelch, followed by a series of gurgling sounds. The blockage gave way, and the water flowed freely once more. King TeaZy stood back, wiping his hands with satisfaction. "Problem solved," he declared triumphantly. Moments later, a very bedraggled and foul-smelling Christian emerged from the now-functioning lavatory. Covered head to toe in the castle's waste, he looked at the king with a mixture of resignation and disgust. "I live to serve, your Majesty," he muttered. King TeaZy, his temper cooled, couldn't help but chuckle. "You have indeed, Christian. You have indeed." And so, the mystery of the clogged toilet was solved, leaving the west bank of the castle running smoothly once more, albeit at the cost of a jester's dignity.
Book 2, Year 1779, Sheriff TeaZys and the Princess.
The dusty streets of Gold Rush City were eerily quiet as Sheriff TeaZy rode into town. His eyes, as sharp as an eagle's, scanned the horizon. He had been on the trail of Johnny, the Kid, for months, the notorious outlaw whose name struck fear in the hearts of men and women alike. Known for his quick draw and ruthless nature, Johnny the Kid was a menace to anyone who crossed his path. Today, however, the stakes were higher than ever. Word had reached TeaZys that Johnny had just robbed the Gold Rush Bank, taking with him a small fortune. TeaZys knew this was his chance. He had to catch Johnny before he vanished into the wilderness again. His horse, Thunder, galloped at a brisk pace, sensing the urgency in TeaZys' demeanor. As TeaZys approached the bank, the scene was chaotic. Townsfolk were in a frenzy, and the bank manager, Mr. Grady, was shouting incoherently about the stolen money. TeaZys dismounted, his boots hitting the ground with a thud, and made his way through the crowd. "Where did he go?" the sheriff demanded. Grady pointed a trembling finger toward the outskirts of town. "Headed that way, Sheriff. Took off with everything we had." TeaZys tipped his hat and mounted Thunder once more, riding hard in the direction Grady had indicated. The trail was fresh, and TeaZys followed it with the precision of a bloodhound. Hours passed, and the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the rugged terrain. As night fell, TeaZys found himself in a desolate canyon. He knew he was close. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out, narrowly missing his head. TeaZys dove behind a boulder, his revolver drawn. He peered out and saw Johnny the Kid standing on a rocky ledge, gun in hand. "It's over, Johnny," TeaZys shouted. "Surrender now, and no one else gets hurt." Johnny laughed, a harsh, bitter sound. "You think you can take me, Sheriff? I've been outsmarting you for years." The shootout that followed was intense. Bullets ricocheted off rocks, and the air was thick with gunpowder. TeaZys' aim was true, and soon Johnny was hit, collapsing to the ground with a groan. TeaZys approached cautiously, his gun still trained on the outlaw. Johnny was badly wounded, clutching his side as blood seeped through his fingers. "Why, Johnny?" TeaZys asked, kneeling beside him. "Why all the stealing? What are you after anyway?" With a pained expression, Johnny reached into his pocket and pulled out a locket. He handed it to TeaZys, his voice barely above a whisper. For Sophie the princess, she's the only hope. TeaZys opened the locket to see a portrait of a young woman, regal and beautiful. Johnny's eyes began to close, his strength fading fast. She's one of the 4 princesses, keeping the planet alive, Johnny rasped. Without her, everything falls apart. TeaZys felt a pang of sorrow as Johnny's breathing slowed, and finally ceased. He stood up, his resolve hardening. He had to find Princess Sophie and get her to safety. The next few days were a blur of travel and danger. TeaZys followed Johnny's cryptic directions, navigating through treacherous mountains and dense forests. Eventually, he found a hidden cabin deep in the woods. Inside, a young woman lay weak and feverish, surrounded by remnants of Johnny's stolen goods. "Sophie?" TeaZys asked gently. She nodded weakly, her eyes filled with fear and hope. TeaZys quickly assessed her condition and realized she needed immediate medical attention. He carried her to Thunder and rode swiftly to the nearest town with a doctor. Weeks later, Sophie had recovered thanks to TeaZys' efforts. The townsfolk soon learned of her true identity and the vital role she played in maintaining the balance of their world. With her strength restored, Sophie didn't just survive, she thrived. Her wisdom and courage inspired everyone she met. In time, Sophie was elected as the first president of the United States, leading the nation with grace and vision. Sheriff TeaZy watched her inauguration with pride, knowing that he had played a part in saving not just a princess, but the entire planet. As he rode off into the sunset, TeaZys felt a sense of peace. The journey had been long and fraught with danger, but in the end, justice had prevailed, and a brighter future lay ahead for all.
Book 3. Year 1955. TeaZy in the 50s.
TeaZy combed his hair one last time, glancing at his reflection in the mirror. He adjusted his bow tie, grinning at how dapper he looked in his prom suit. Tonight was the night he had been waiting for all year, and nothing could spoil it. He grabbed the corsage for his girlfriend, Lizzie, and headed out the door. The rain poured down as TeaZy drove his old Chevy along the slick roads. He squinted through the windshield, barely making out a figure standing on the side of the road, drenched and waving desperately. TeaZy pulled over, rolling down his window. "Need a ride?" he shouted over the downpour. "Yes, please," the stranger exclaimed, hurrying to the passenger side. He was a young man, not much older than TeaZy, with a guitar slung over his back. "Name's Mikey. I'm supposed to play a gig in town, but my car broke down. If I don't get there, I'm toast." "Hop in," TeaZy said. "I'm TeaZy." They sped off, the rain pounding on the roof like a drum. Mikey tapped nervously on his guitar case, muttering about the time. TeaZy tried to reassure him, but his own excitement for the night kept bubbling up. They arrived at the venue, a small club downtown, and Mikey dashed inside, waving a quick thank you. TeaZy glanced at the clock. He still had time before picking up Lizzie. Curious, he decided to check out Mikey's performance. Inside, the atmosphere was electric. Mikey was already on stage, captivating the audience with his soulful voice and skillful guitar playing. TeaZy found himself drawn to the music, tapping his foot to the rhythm. "Johnny be good," the song went, but something felt off. TeaZy noticed a group of men at the back of the room, whispering and pointing at Mikey. They looked angry, dangerous. TeaZy's instincts kicked in. He moved closer to the stage, keeping an eye on the men. As Mikey finished his set, the men advanced, shoving through the crowd. TeaZy's heart raced. He had to act fast. He climbed onto the stage, grabbing Mikey's arm. "Come on, we need to get out of here," TeaZy shouted. Mikey hesitated for a split second, then nodded. They bolted for the back door, pushing through the kitchen and out into the alley. TeaZy glanced back to see the men struggling to follow, hindered by the crowd and kitchen staff. As they emerged into the rain-soaked alley, TeaZy spotted something that made him stop in his tracks. A sleek, silver car hovered in the air, its doors open and lights blinking. Mikey seemed unfazed, pulling TeaZy toward the car. "Hurry," Mikey urged. "It's our only chance." TeaZy stumbled forward, too stunned to argue. They climbed into the car, and it shot into the sky, leaving the men below staring in disbelief. TeaZy clutched his seat, watching the city lights blur beneath them. "What is this?" TeaZy managed to ask, his voice shaking. Mikey grinned. "A little something from the future. Thanks for your help, TeaZy. I owe you one." Before TeaZy could process what was happening, the car descended, landing gently in a quiet street. Mikey handed him a small device. "Take this," Mikey said. You'll understand someday. And hey, enjoy your prom night. TeaZy stepped out of the car, dazed. The silver vehicle rose into the sky and disappeared into the clouds. He looked down at the device in his hand, bewildered but curious. As the rain began to let up, TeaZy shook his head, pocketed the device, and hurried to pick up Lizzie. Tonight was still prom night, and he wasn't going to let anything, not even a flying car, ruin it.
Book 4, Year 3300 AD. TeaZy, 3300 AD. The world is over.
In the year 3300, the world was a vastly different place. Long gone were the days of fossil fuels and traditional energy sources. Humanity had exhausted every natural resource, leading to a desperate search for alternative power. In the midst of this chaos, scientists stumbled upon a bizarre yet potent energy source, semen power. This discovery, while initially revolutionary, quickly spiraled into a nightmare when Al took over, driven by the malevolent genius of Dr. Rico. Dr. Rico, a once respected scientist, had seized control of the powerful algorithms driving the world's L. With this power, he constructed a sprawling city, powered entirely by the harvested semen of imprisoned humans. This city, a gleaming bastion of excess, served as a playground for Dr. Rico and his 5 chosen friends, while the rest of humanity languished in darkness and captivity, their bodies mere fuel for the perverse machinations of their oppressors. In the shadows of this dystopian nightmare, a resistance was born. TeaZy, a fierce and resourceful leader, emerged as the beacon of hope for the oppressed. He had seen firsthand the horrors of Dr. Rico's regime, the dehumanizing farms where men were kept in perpetual cycles of harvesting. Fueled by a burning desire for justice and freedom, TeaZy rallied the broken spirits of the enslaved into a formidable resistance group. Plus TeaZy stood atop a crumbling building, overlooking the fortified walls of Dr. Rico's city. His eyes, sharp and determined, scanned the horizon as he planned their next move. He turned to his second-in-command, Franeth, a brilliant strategist and fierce warrior. "Tonight, we strike the heart of Rico's operation," TeaZy declared. "We destroy the semen machine and free our people." As night fell, the resistance moved under the cover of darkness. TeaZy led his team through a network of underground tunnels, long abandoned and forgotten by Dr. Rico's empire. They emerged at the edge of the city, where the colossal semen machine loomed like a grotesque monument to mankind's darkest days. TeaZy signaled for silence as they approached the heavily guarded facility. With Franeth's guidance, they bypassed security systems and neutralized guards with silent precision. The team infiltrated the main chamber, where the semen machine hummed ominously, surrounded by rows of captive men, their faces a blend of exhaustion and despair. "Spread out and set the charges," TeaZy commanded. "We have to time this perfectly." As the resistance members worked swiftly, TeaZy moved to the control room, where he found Dr. Rico's holographic projection overseeing the operations. Rico's image smirked, his eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. "You think you can stop me, TeaZy?" Rico's voice echoed. "I've built an empire. You're nothing but a relic of the past." "Your empire is built on suffering," TeaZy retorted. "And tonight, it ends." With a defiant glare, TeaZy activated a device that Franeth had designed, a virus that would corrupt the machine's systems. Alarms blared as the machine began to malfunction, its once perfect rhythm faltering. "Now!" TeaZy shouted. Explosions rocked the facility as the charges detonated. The machine's core shattered, sending a cascade of sparks and debris. The captives, realizing their chains were broken, began to rise, their hope rekindled by the sight of their liberators. Plus TeaZy and his team guided the freed men through the chaos, ensuring they reached safety. As they emerged from the burning facility, TeaZy turned back to see the city skyline flicker and dim, the once unstoppable machine, now a heap of smoldering ruin. Dr. Rico's hologram flickered one last time before vanishing, his empire crumbling around him. The resistance had won. But TeaZy knew their work was far from over. Rebuilding their world would be a daunting task, but with freedom reclaimed, humanity had a chance to start anew. TeaZy stood amidst the liberated people, their eyes filled with gratitude and determination. He raised his voice, a rallying cry for the dawn of a new era. "Together, we will rebuild. Together, we will ensure that such tyranny never rises again. Today marks the birth of a free world." The crowd erupted in cheers, their voices echoing through the night. TeaZy smiled, holding Franeth, knowing that despite the long road ahead, hope had been restored. For now,
Book 5, Christian and the Catapult, Year 476 CE.
In the bustling streets of ancient Rome, Christian the Centennial Guard strutted with an air of determination. His armored sandals clinked on the cobblestones, announcing his presence. He had a revolutionary idea. A new catapult system that promised to hurl stones farther and with more accuracy than ever before. The only thing he lacked was funding. Christian approached TorreZ the banker, a shrewd man known more for his love of gold than his sense of adventure. TorreZ sat in his opulent office, surrounded by scrolls of accounts and sacks of coins. TorreZ, I have a proposition, Christian began, his voice brimming with enthusiasm. TorreZ peered over his spectacles, raising an eyebrow. A proposition? Unless it's guaranteed gold. I'm not interested. Christian grinned. This is better than gold. It's a catapult. Stronger, faster, more accurate. Perfect for the impending Punic Wars. TorreZ sighed and leaned back. Show me. The next day, in a dusty field just outside the city, Christian prepared for the demonstration. TorreZ watched from a safe distance, fanning himself with a palm leaf. Christian's team of soldiers struggled to operate the cumbersome machine. Each attempt saw the catapult flinging stones wildly off target, one crashing into a nearby olive grove, another splashing into a public fountain, much to the dismay of a bather. After several mishaps, Christian approached TorreZ, his face red from exertion and embarrassment. Give me one more chance. TorreZ, amused yet unconvinced, waved a hand. Very well. But this better be good. Just then, a frazzled servant whispered urgently into TorreZ's ear. TorreZ's expression darkened, and he beckoned Christian closer. I have a personal problem, TorreZ confessed. My prized pet ostrich has gone missing. Help me find it, and I might consider your catapult. Determined, Christian rallied his men. They scoured the city and found the ostrich entangled in a vendor's tent. With some effort, they freed the bird and returned it to TorreZ, who was so relieved he reluctantly agreed to fund the catapult. Days later, the Punic Wars began. Christian, eager to prove his invention's worth, ordered his men to deploy the catapult. The problem was, in all the excitement, no one had bothered to train the soldiers to operate it properly. Load the stone, Christian commanded. The soldiers, looking perplexed, loaded the stone. But then, a crucial decision came, cutting the cable to release the catapult. They huddled in confusion before one brave soldier sliced a random cable. With a tremendous twang, the catapult arm swung upward, launching the stone straight into the air. Christian and his men watched in horror and awe as the projectile arced beautifully before plummeting directly back down. The resulting impact created a crater, sending Roman soldiers flying in every direction. TorreZ, observing from his luxurious tent, rubbed his temples. Remind me why I funded this again? Christian, covered in dirt and debris, crawled out of the crater, and managed a sheepish grin. Look on the bright side, TorreZ. At least we know it works, sort of. And thus, the Roman army's first catapult was both its greatest invention and its most amusing disaster. The legend of Christian's catapult would be told for generations, a tale of ambition, friendship, and the importance of reading the instruction manual.
Book 6, Year 300 ASC, after Second Coming, Ebook in New Jerusalem.
In the radiant land of New Jerusalem, where peace reigned supreme, and the air was thick with the scent of blooming flowers, Ebook lived a serene and contented life. For years, she had wandered the lush forests and verdant meadows, reveling in the beauty of this paradise. Each day was a blessing, and today was no different as she ventured into the great forest to gather berries. As she pulled ripe berries from the bushes, humming a tune of contentment, she noticed a flicker of movement out of the corner of her eye. Turning, she saw an elf standing before her, slender and graceful, with eyes that sparkled like the morning dew. Greetings, Ebook, the elf said, his voice melodic and soothing. I am Elian. I have come to guide you to the great tree. Ebook blinked in surprise. The great tree? Why? There is something you must see, something only you can do, Elian replied with a mysterious smile. Curiosity piqued, Ebook followed Elian through the forest. They walked for what seemed like hours, the trees growing denser, and the air cooler, until they finally reached a towering tree, its branches stretching towards the heavens. The great tree stood before them, ancient and majestic, its bark shimmering with a faint, ethereal light. Elian touched the trunk of the tree, and a doorway appeared, glowing softly. Beyond this door lies another dimension, a realm where Prince TeaZy has slept for 1,000 years since the Great War. It is said that only a beautiful angel from heaven can awaken him with a kiss. Liu Shibu felt a flutter of apprehension and excitement. And you believe I am this angel? Elian nodded. The prophecy speaks of you. Go, and fulfill your destiny. With a deep breath, Liu Shibu stepped through the doorway. She found herself in a dimly lit chamber, where the air was thick with magic. In the center of the room lay a grand, ornate bed, and upon it, Prince TeaZy slept, his handsome face serene and untouched by time. Liu Shibu approached him, her heart pounding in her chest. She gazed at the prince, marveling at his timeless beauty. Leaning down, she pressed her lips gently against his. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a soft glow enveloped the prince, and his eyes fluttered open. He looked up at Liu Shibu, his gaze filled with wonder and gratitude. Who are you? He asked, his voice weak from 1,000 years of slumber. I am Liu Shibu, she replied, smiling. And I believe I am the angel who was meant to awaken you. Prince TeaZy rose from the bed, stretching his limbs, and taking in his surroundings. It has been so long, he murmured. Thank you, Liu Shibu, you have brought me back to the world. Together they stepped through the doorway and returned to New Jerusalem. News of Prince TeaZy's awakening spread quickly, and the people rejoiced. Liu Shibu and Prince TeaZy became symbols of peace and love, their story inspiring hope and unity among the people of New Jerusalem. Under their guidance, the land flourished even more, a testament to the power of love and the fulfillment of destiny. Liu Shibu and Prince TeaZy ruled with wisdom and compassion, ensuring that the paradise of New Jerusalem remained a haven of tranquility for all of humanity. And so, in the heart of this beautiful land, the legend of the angel and the prince was born, a tale that would be told for generations, a reminder that even in the most perfect of worlds, there are still wonders to be discovered and destinies to be fulfilled.
Book 7, Year 2030. All is fair in love and genocide.
In the year 2030, the Mosul Strip was a land scarred by the ongoing Holy War. The conflict had raged for years, with General TeaZy of the Israeli army and General Efran of Jamus locked in a brutal and unending rivalry. Both were legendary in their own right, their battles a testament to their strategic genius and relentless determination. Each encounter left the land more devastated, the stakes growing higher with every clash. As the final battle loomed just 5 days away, tensions ran higher than ever. The world watched with bated breath, expecting a showdown that would determine the fate of the region. Both generals prepared their troops, eager to end the war once and for all. One evening, as the oppressive heat of the day gave way to a cooler, starry night, General TeaZy sought a brief respite from the ceaseless planning. He slipped into a dimly lit local bar, hoping to clear his mind with a drink. As he settled into a quiet corner, he noticed another figure at the bar, a person with a familiar bearing and a steely gaze. It was General Efran. For a moment, the air was thick with tension. Both recognized each other instantly. But instead of drawing weapons, they simply stared, a silent acknowledgement of the countless battles fought between them. Finally, TeaZy broke the silence. Efran, he said, raising his glass in a grudging salute. TeaZy, Efran replied, her eyes narrowing slightly. She raised her own glass, and they both took a sip, the alcohol burning away some of the animosity. They sat in silence for a while, the noise of the bar a distant hum. Eventually, TeaZy spoke again. Do you ever wonder if it's worth it? Efran glanced at him, surprised by the candid question. Every day, she admitted. But we have our orders and our beliefs. True, TeaZy said. But sometimes I think, maybe there's more to life than this endless fighting. Efran nodded slowly. You know, TeaZy, we're not so different, you and I. We both fight for what we believe in. But maybe, just maybe, we're both tired of this war. As the night wore on, the two generals found themselves sharing stories, grudging laughs, and a few more drinks. They discovered a mutual respect, a realization that beneath the uniforms and the orders, they were both just people, individuals who had seen too much bloodshed. The day of the final battle arrived, but neither General TeaZy nor General Efran was anywhere to be found. Their armies, confused and leaderless, received unexpected orders. Stand down. Panic and bewilderment spread among the ranks, but without their generals to lead them into battle. Both sides hesitated. The world's leaders were thrown into a frenzy, desperate for explanations, but none came. The two generals had vanished, leaving only a legacy of confusion and a profound message. In the absence of conflict, a strange calm settled over the Mosul Strip. The soldiers, once bitter enemies, found themselves without purpose. Tentatively at first, and then with growing conviction, they began to lay down their arms. Conversations sparked between former foes, and a fragile peace began to take root. The disappearance of generals, TeaZy, and A FREE became a symbol of a new possibility. Leaders across the globe took notice, realizing the futility of endless wars. Diplomacy and dialogue replaced aggression and hostility. The Middle East, once a tinderbox of conflict, began to heal. The tale of the two generals who chose peace over war was told and retold, a beacon of hope in a weary world. And so, from the ashes of the Holy War, a new era of understanding and cooperation emerged, ensuring that no war was ever fought again in the Middle East.
Book 8. Year 1944. Two Jewish Nazis.
In the autumn of 1944, the German town of Rosenheim lay shrouded in the heavy pall of war. The relentless march of the Allied forces weighed on the minds of its inhabitants. Within the heart of the German army, Sergeant Thomas Zimmermann, known as Sergeant TeaZy, or TeaZy, had garnered respect and admiration for his bravery and skill. Under the command of General Savannah Breed, one of the rare female generals, he had become an indispensable asset. General Breed, a stern yet fair leader, had always relied on Sergeant TeaZy for the most critical missions. Their bond was one of mutual respect, forged in the crucible of countless battles. However, a secret love had blossomed within Sergeant's heart, a love that could endanger them both. Yasmin Tugger, a young Jewish girl hidden in the shadows of Rosenheim, had captured Sergeant TeaZy's heart with her resilience and gentle spirit. They met under the most perilous circumstances, yet their bond grew stronger with each stolen moment. Sergeant TeaZy knew the risks, but his love for Yasmin was undeniable. General Breed, aware of the clandestine affair, chose to protect Sergeant TeaZy. She understood the harsh consequences they would face if discovered. However, Captain Eric Zitt, a man of ambition and ruthlessness, was always lurking, seeking any opportunity to advance his position. One cold evening, as Sergeant TeaZy and Yasmin met in a secluded cellar, Captain Zitt uncovered their secret. Fueled by jealousy and a desire for power, he wasted no time in reporting his findings. General Breed, too, was implicated in the scandal for her complicity. They were swiftly sentenced to death by firing squad. As dawn broke, the condemned trio stood before the firing squad, their fates seemingly sealed. Captain Zitt stood smugly, anticipating his triumph. Yet, fate had other plans. The rumble of distant artillery grew louder, and within moments, American soldiers stormed the town. The chaos of battle provided the perfect diversion. Amidst the gunfire and explosions, the American forces overwhelmed the German defenders. Captain Zitt, driven by a desperate survival instinct, fled into the woods, swearing vengeance. In the confusion, the firing squad fell to the American onslaught, leaving Sergeant TeaZy, General Breed, and Yasmin alive. The aftermath of the skirmish saw Rosenheim liberated. The three fugitives were taken in by the American forces, who, recognizing the dire situation, offered them sanctuary. Sergeant TeaZy and Yasmin, finally free from the shadow of war, began a new life together. General Breed, grateful for her own survival, faded into the annals of history. Captain Zitt, his ambition thwarted and his pride wounded, vanished into the remnants of a collapsing Reich, vowing revenge. But for Sergeant TeaZy and Yasmin, the war had ended, and a new chapter of hope and peace had begun.
Book 9. Year 1996. Danny and the Hound.
Danny, a small poodle with a scruffy white coat, trotted alongside his best friend, Tease the Hound, a muscular Doberman. The duo had spent years roaming the alleys and backstreets of the city, always on the hunt for their next meal. Tease, ever vigilant, ensured Danny's safety from the dangers lurking in the shadows. It was a chilly evening in 1996, the moon hanging low in the sky as the two friends found themselves behind a dingy restaurant. Tease nudged a trash bin with his nose, tipping it over to reveal a small feast of discarded scraps. "Here you go, Danny," he said, his deep voice gruff yet gentle. Danny's eyes lit up. "Thanks, Tease. You're the best," he replied, his voice high-pitched and enthusiastic. The two dug in, savoring their find. Their meal was abruptly interrupted by a low growl. TeaZy looked up to see Perry, a massive pit bull, flanked by a gang of tough-looking dogs. Well, what do we have here? Perry sneered, his eyes fixed on the food. TeaZy stepped forward, his posture protective. We're just trying to eat, Perry. No need for trouble, he said calmly, though his muscles tensed, ready for a fight. Perry's gang began to circle, their intentions clear. This is our turf, Perry growled. You gotta pay the price if you want to eat here. Danny whimpered, inching closer to TeaZy. The Doberman stood his ground, his gaze unwavering. We don't want any trouble. We're just trying to survive. Same as you. Perry's eyes narrowed. And what makes you think you're any different from us, huh? TeaZy took a deep breath. Because we're all just trying to protect our own, he said, nodding towards Danny. I look out for him, just like you look out for your pack. For a moment, there was silence. Perry's growl faded, and he studied TeaZy, seeing something familiar in his eyes. The tension eased, and Perry nodded slowly. You got guts, TeaZy. Maybe you're right. We all gotta stick together if we want to make it out here. TeaZy relaxed slightly. So, what do you say, Perry? Truce? Perry considered it, then offered his paw. Truce. From now on, we look out for each other. Danny's tail wagged furiously. Does this mean we can be friends? He asked, his voice filled with hope. Perry chuckled. Sure, little guy. Friends. That night marked the beginning of something new. Perry and TeaZy, along with their packs, began to organize, looking out for one another, and sharing resources. Word spread quickly among the stray dogs of the city, and soon, more and more joined the growing alliance. By the end of the year, the first dog government was formed, a council of leaders from each pack, all dedicated to the common goal of survival and protection. Under their leadership, the streets became safer, and food was more plentiful. And so, in the alleys of the city, a new era began, led by Danny the Poodle, TeaZy the Hound, and Perry the Pit Bull, three unlikely friends who showed that even in the harshest of places, unity and compassion could thrive.
Book 10, Unknown Year, all for the V.
In the heart of an ancient Indian civilization, nestled between towering mountains and dense forests, two tribes were at odds. The air was thick with tension, and the night sky, illuminated by a full moon, seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Eddie V, an elder and the wisest man of his tribe, had been held hostage for months by an opposing tribe, who believed that the moon had summoned his sacrifice. Chief TeaZy, the formidable leader of Eddie's tribe, knew the value of his elder. Eddie V's wisdom was irreplaceable, a beacon of guidance for his people. Determined to rescue him, TeaZy called upon his most trusted warriors, Caitlin the Snowball, a fierce and cunning female warrior, and Ricky the Spear, a man whose skill in combat was unmatched, stood by his side. Along with them were Miggy the Man, a strong and brave fighter, Jorge the Boar, known for his fierce tenacity, and Caesar the Fish, whose agility and swiftness were legendary. Nathan, the weapons specialist, had recently developed new technology that could turn the tide in their favor. Armed with these innovations, the team set out on a stealth mission under the cover of darkness. They moved silently through the forest, the only sound being the rustling of leaves beneath their feet. The opposing tribe's camp lay ahead, illuminated by the flickering light of dying fires. The sentries were asleep, lulled by a false sense of security. Caitlin the Snowball and Ricky the Spear took the lead, their movements precise and deliberate. Nathan's newest technology, a silent and deadly weapon, proved its worth as they eliminated the guards without raising an alarm. One by one, the warriors infiltrated the camp, their presence undetected. Miggy the Man and Jorge the Boar moved swiftly, their combined strength ensuring that any resistance was swiftly dealt with. Caesar the Fish's agility allowed him to navigate through the camp with ease, cutting down enemies before they even realized they were under attack. As the last of the opposing tribe fell, TeaZy and his team approached the hut where Eddie V was held. The elder, though weakened, smiled at the sight of his rescuers. It's time to go home, Eddie, TeaZy said softly, helping him to his feet. But their mission was not yet complete. Chief Dueñas, the leader of the opposing tribe, and his first mate, Javi the Eyeball, had awoken to the commotion. Dueñas' face twisted with rage as he realized his plan had failed. A short but fierce fight ensued. TeaZy and Ricky the Spear clashed with Javi, their combined might overpowering him. Caitlin the Snowball confronted Dueñas, her speed and agility giving her the upper hand. However, it was Eddie V who stepped forward, a newfound strength in his eyes. With a swift and decisive blow, he ended Dueñas' reign of terror. As Dueñas lay dying, His voice trembled. I'm sorry, Eddie, he whispered, his eyes reflecting regret. Eddie V looked down at him, a mixture of sorrow and relief in his gaze. Your choices led us here, Dueñas. May the spirits guide you in the afterlife. With Dueñas and Javi defeated, the opposing tribe's threat was extinguished. Eddie V, supported by his tribe, walked out of the camp and into the moonlit night. The rescue mission was a success, and as they journeyed back to their village, the bond between the warriors and their wise elder grew stronger. Chief TeaZy knew that the victory was not just in the lives saved, but in the unity and strength that had been forged in the face of adversity. Eddie V's wisdom would continue to guide them, ensuring that their tribe thrived for generations to come.